Hey, everybody. Welcome to our monthly episode of Honest Conversations in Ending Marriages, Relationships, and Having Children. So, by the time we air this episode, it'll be July. It's meant for June, but due to scheduling, mainly my schedule, we will air this in July. So, we are actually talking about an event in June, but airing in July. So, again, welcome to our monthly episode, and I have Christy Legal here with me today. Christy, how are you doing?
Oh, great. And I'm very excited about this.
Awesome. Yeah, so you actually brought this to my attention, and so June 12th. What is June 12th known for, or what day is that about?
Yeah. So June 12th is a big day legally and as far as human interactions as well, because it's National Loving Day. And to give you the background of, and then, why it became a legal thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this was back in 1950s in the
Okay.
South. And
Mm-hmm.
Mildred Dolores Jeter and Richard Perry Loving lived in Virginia. They fell in love and they wanted to get married.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no interracial marriages in Virginia and a lot of other places back then. And it was actually against the law. And so they drove to Washington, D.C. to get legally married, which actually is very close. That
Mm-hmm.
part was good. And then they came back to Virginia. And so they actually broke two laws. So in Virginia, they're not allowed to be married. And it's also illegal to leave the state to get married and then come back to Virginia in the
During that time in the 1950s.
Yep, in the 1950s, in 1958. So they committed two crimes. And then a few weeks after that, law enforcement officers entered their home at night while they were asleep and arrested them and took them to jail. Their crimes were punishable by 1 to 5 years in prison. So these folks were going to be going to jail because they got married and because they left Virginia, got married, and came back to Virginia. Yeah. They were sentenced to 1 year in prison. And then the judge said they could avoid prison if they left Virginia and did not return for 25 years. Very creative sentence, though. I
Mm-hmm.
this gentleman, Judge Leon M. Brazil, I give him credit for that. Um, so they agreed to move because they didn't want to go to prison. They moved to Washington, D.C., which was where they were married. And then they had difficulties in Washington, D.C. They were far from their families, their support system, and the rural life that they knew.
Mm-hmm.
Complete culture shock, right? And then their young son, Donald, was hit by a car. He only had minor injuries, fortunately. Um, they didn't have a lot of money or a lot of options. And in 1963, the country was talking about civil rights and having a national civil rights bill and a march on Washington. And so then that is when Mildred reached out to U.S. Attorney General Robert Kennedy to ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that's when it all began the fight that interracial marriages and relationships not be illegal, and leaving one state to then coming back after getting married not be illegal. Um, so they actually filed a case against the United States or the Virginia government, and Then the Lovings case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Less than a hundredth of a percent of court cases get to the United States Supreme Court. And the reason that that one got to the United States Supreme Court is because it's a major civil rights thing. Like, not
Mhm.
raise somebody, based on each person's ethnicity. Um,
Mhm.
and the lawyers for the Lovings agreed that they were denied equal protection under the law. And in a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court of the United States struck down like centuries, hundreds of racist laws that did not allow interracial marriages and relationships.
Mhm.
And then the Lovings and their son got to return to Virginia, which is what they considered to be their home. And that Supreme Court decision, called Loving versus Virginia,
Mhm.
was decided on June 12th, 1967. And so that's why every year on June 12th, it's National Loving Day, and we celebrate that you can love somebody who doesn't look like you, and
Mhm.
and you can get married to someone who doesn't look like you. Um, so it's an important day in civil rights, um, and it's also an important day in romantic relationships and friendships. Um, I'm sure many of the people who are watching, um, have friends who are not the same race. Pai and I are not the same race, if you couldn't tell.
Right.
And like, who knows? Like, maybe we couldn't be friends if
Mhm.
this law had not been decided by the United States Supreme Court. Because who knows? Like, maybe it would have started out with marriages and romantic relationships and then gone on to friends.
Mhm.
And we could not be friends. And I could not be friends with a whole bunch of people who I'm friends with.
Yeah.
I love very much. Um, and so, that's like the history, behind National Loving Day. And it's just really important. There are a lot of interracial relationships in the United States, including Minnesota. Um, I mean, I have, like, I don't know, probably at least 10 friends who are couples who are interracial relationships. And
Mhm.
honestly, I have friends who they themselves are interracial. Like, they are
Mhm.
multiracial, excuse me, multiracial.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, think about
Yeah.
that for a minute.
Yeah.
If
I
there's so many
actually,
ethnicities,
yeah.
and then, like, if that old law existed, like, okay, well, then who can I marry and who can't I?
Right. And that wasn't that long ago. All of this was not that long ago.
Nope.
No, no. I think I had something about like the number of interracial marriages in the US.
Oh,
But yeah, let's see if I have that article somewhere. I think I might have. Bear with me for a second. I think I
yes, it
sent it
was
to myself yesterday.
1967
Oh,
that
okay.
the US Supreme Court decided that. 1967, so we would be coming up, in 2 years, it would be the 60-year anniversary.
Wow.
And, yeah,
Okay.
you're right, Haya. In the big scheme of things, 60 years is not a lot.
Mhm. It's not. It's not. Let me look at this one. Copy. Just wanted to show all of you here that again oh, here it is, a loving story. Okay. Never mind. So this article is a little older, but some of the stats was from like 2015. So I mean it's about 10 years, but I want to show my screen here. Present. Can you see this? Christie intermarriage in the US 50 years after Loving
Yep.
versus Virginia. So again, this is about 2015, oh, 2017. And so it said 1 in 6 newlyweds are still married to someone of a different race or ethnicity. And so back in 2015, it said 17% of all US newlyweds had a spouse of a different race or ethnicity, making more than a five-fold increase since 1967 when 3% of newlyweds were intermarried, according to the Pew Research Center analysis of US Census Bureau data. In the year, the US Supreme Court in the Loving versus Virginia case ruled that marriage. So, yeah, again, this gives all the stats about the marriages. I will include this in the description box. So let me stop that. Stop presenting. Okay. Yeah, and so yes, you have the freedom and the right to marry and love whoever you want. And thank you, Christy, for giving us that feedback. And I think there's like several movies on this too, by the way. So, which is, it's a great movie. It's not, it's like romantic, and also it gives you a lot of things to think about. And so I know that you talked about like the Minnesota, of that Minnesota. You and I, before recording, talked about how some of the law has changed in the last 20 years when a child of the union of the interracial marriage is born, that if the parents were to divorce, the child has certain rights, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, law has really gone to the other side now because in the state of Minnesota,
Mhm.
when an interracial, couple divorces, or if the interracial couple was not married at all, um, and there's a divorce or a child custody case started, part of determining the parenting time schedule is that the child have the opportunity to participate in the culture or cultures of both parents. And so that means, if one parent is, let's say, Hmong and European, and
Mhm.
another parent is, let's say, African and Native American,
Mhm.
then that means, whatever cultures, of those cultures, each parent recognizes, participates in, um, that child, the custody and parenting time schedule needs to reflect and give that child an opportunity to participate in, experience all the cultures. Um, so, and that could get pretty complicated. It could be like the child, shall participate in, a certain church, but then, maybe the child will also participate in something else that one of the other cultures values. And it could be like that the child will participate in Hmong New Year every year, but then
Mhm.
the child will also participate in um, Bastille Day, which is,
Mhm.
um, a French Liberation Day. Uh,
Mhm.
and so, depending on how many cultures are involved, and how much each of the parents participates in one or more cultures, it could get pretty crazy. Like there could be a lot of like, oh, this thing, one of the parents says this thing is important to me, and that thing, 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 and that thing. And, as long as it's related to ethnicity, culture, religion, one of those things, uh,
Mhm.
then there should be a child custody and parenting time order that allows the child to participate in those things. And so that's when you want to be working with a legal professional, number one, who knows this.
Mhm.
And number two is going to help you folks craft a child custody and parenting time agreement that lists out like the various things that the child will have, will participate in. Like, whatever is important to each parent, each year for that child to participate in, or it could be weekly, like, church, a Christian church,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
you know, or, at least that the child is going to participate in Christian church, during that parent's parenting time. Um, but like there's a lot of different things depending on the culture that would be important to that parent to have his or her child participate in
Mhm.
as a member of that culture. And that's really, um, that is so different than, 1967, where it's like
Yeah.
you couldn't even have an interracial marriage. So you couldn't
Mhm.
even have an interracial child.
Mhm.
Now it's like, okay, people have interracial children, and people
Mhm.
have children, and the two parents don't have the same religion. And
Yeah.
so, like, but the child has a right to learn the culture of both parents. And so you're going to want the various cultural activities to be in your child custody and parenting time order. And the court will actually want to know that the child is having an opportunity to experience both cultures. It'll be part of the documents that your legal professional writes. And
Mhm.
yeah, so honestly, it's pretty amazing in 60 years that it's completely flipped, and now we are ensuring that the child will know all of his or her cultural heritage.
That's so interesting because when you told me this, I was like, "What? That is, I've never heard of this." So this is relatively new within the last 20 years. Then.
Yeah, I've been working in family law for 12, so I know it's been around since I've been working in family law. So I'm gonna guess maybe
Okay.
it's maybe 20 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Oh goodness. Just hearing you talk, I'm like, wow, the complexity of this type of arrangement. If Is this something that the parents have to request, or is this something that the courts require for both parents to discuss?
Yeah. So, people who work with me who are
Mhm.
like amicable and reasonable, um, we'll talk about it.
Mhm.
Like, because it'll be, somewhat easy for me to tell if, they're from different cultures. And then we can have a
Yeah.
discussion. Like, so I see that you're both from
Mhm.
different cultures. Like, are there different cultural things that, you know,
Mm.
I'll, talk to each one of them, so, whatever your name is, are there things
Yeah.
from your culture that you want to make sure that your child or children participate in each year? And then
Mhm.
for you, other person, and, let's start talking about that. Let's start in January. Like, let's start at the beginning of the year and talk
Yeah.
about what things you want to make sure your kids participate in, because, you folks are divorcing or you folks have separated. And so now, I mean, we literally need to decide where your child is going to be every day of the year.
Yeah.
And so, if there are important cultural things that you want him, her, or them to participate in, then
Mhm.
we need to get that, listed here so we can put that in the documents, so that when that, you know, thing that is meaningful to your culture happens, you have
Mhm.
the right to have your children participate in that.
Mhm. Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about all of that too. It sounds very complex, of course, very complex. And so if a child, let's say the father has more, I guess like more, more things that they want the child to participate in. Does that mean that the father will have more custody of the child, or no? It just means that these are the things that they have to attend.
Yeah, and so it's like a balancing act too. Um,
Okay.
so the actual custody and parenting time, um, like the percentage and all that is like technically the same and based
Mhm.
on other factors. But
Okay.
then there are like special holidays, and there's what's
Mhm.
called holiday parenting time.
Okay.
And for holiday parenting time, then we would have all of these cultural events.
Mhm.
So if it's like Hmong New Year, that would be then one of the holidays that the child, would spend with the Hmong parent.
Mhm.
And whatever the culture specific holiday is, and so that would fall under holiday parenting time. So, and the bigger thing is just regular parenting time, like
Mhm.
know, maybe the child is with mom Mondays, Tuesdays, dad is Wednesday, Thursday, and then every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the
Mhm.
parent is off. That's
Mhm.
the regular parenting time schedule.
Yeah.
And then you have the holiday parenting time schedule, which is different, and it might impede on the regular parenting time schedule. So,
Mhm.
like if Hmong New Year is on a Wednesday, and
Mhm.
that's not dad's parenting time, but it is dad's parenting time because of the holiday uh,
Mhm.
schedule.
Okay. A balancing act. Definitely a balancing act.
Yeah.
Whew. I'm just listening to you talk. I'm like, gosh, someone who does not have kids and who had her kids last week, two nieces. It was so funny. They said, "Oh my god, I feel like I'm in a custody because you're dropping me back and forth, and I don't see my siblings." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is what it's like to like be, have different parents because their parents were out of town, and it was a lot of work for me too. It was a lot of work for me too. So I give credit to all the parents out there who have to have this balancing act, especially when there are um, cultural things to consider for both culture. If one of the parents is culture, and hearing you talk about this, it's like, okay, all right. How much of your clients have you worked with have been in interracial marriages that are seeking like divorce and separation that you've worked with?
Um, for ones who have children, actually, it has been a very tiny percentage.
Okay.
I'm working on that. I'm working on reaching
Mhm.
more culturally diverse people. Um, but yeah, it's been a very small fraction. When I used to work for under attorneys, there were
Mhm.
a few more of those types of situations,
Okay.
and like yeah, I haven't had to do very much of that, um, other than like learning how to do it.
Mhm.
But honestly, it's like any other kind of holiday parenting time.
Mhm.
Instead of being like the 4th of July and Halloween and, you know,
Halloween, of course, that's
stuff
important.
like that. Um, Instead, it's like, oh, maybe the person is Jewish. So then it's going to be Hanukkah and
Yeah.
Rosh Hashanah. And,
Mhm.
or maybe the person is Muslim. So then it's going to
Mhm.
be Ramadan, or not all of Ramadan, because
Mhm.
I believe that's a month, but but like certain like days of Ramadan, or
Mhm.
some, like that. So
Yeah.
it's very similar to just general holiday parenting time.
Mhm.
You have to apply a cultural context to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and coming as a therapist, I too would have to say with you, I have a lot of clients who are, I would say about like less than 10% were in interracial marriages or relationships. And I should clarify that I did not do relationship and couples and marriage therapy. I did individual. However, I worked with the individual to problem solve and to empower so that they can, work with themselves and the relationships that they're in. And I would say, I think one of the things that I dealt with clients who were like, I think interracial relationships like marriages or any other type of relationship, It really is all about being on the same page with your partner. And a lot of them, I think, so Western American, especially society, is very individualistic. And so, it's really individualistic. It's really about you. It's not a lot about family. And when you have a partner or you intermarry into another culture, before you marry, have conversations about what is the expectation of you once you get married, because you don't marry just a person. You marry their family and their extended family. And you have to understand how all of that works, because if you don't, you're going to get so frustrated and you're going to get angry and you're going to get mad, while your partner, who is a different culture or a different race, different religion, whatever, has this expectation, and it's hard for them to say no. And you're like, why can't you just say no? Just say no. Don't give money. Don't do this. Don't do that. And they're like, well, we have to. Why? So it's before you get married, please understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, and while you were talking, I just thought of that in a lot of African cultures, West African cultures, that when someone, so the ones who have moved to the United States, that
Mhm,
when someone in like Minnesota who is of their, who came from their country passes, like
mhm.
everybody's supposed to go to the funeral and everybody's supposed to like donate like a decent amount of money.
Yeah,
And even if you did not know the person at all,
yeah.
not at all, you didn't know the person at all, and to a European American, that sounds like really.
So why? Why should I? I don't know them. It's kind of like that individualistic comes out. Like, I don't owe them anything. And to a lot of other cultures, it's very communal, and especially death, marriage, birth, that is coming together. That is very communal. It takes a village. Like, it's very village. And in American, it's very individualistic. It's like, don't bother me. I don't owe you anything. But in other cultures, it's like, we are a community. We help each other. Funerals and weddings are expensive, and we will help you. And when it's our turn, we expect that we would hope that you would help us. American does not do that. And so, if you marry into someone from a different culture and has a communal thinking, yes, it is expected that you will help in some form or capacity. And if you don't understand why, and your spouse is helping and you're frustrated, it's like, well, why are you always doing this, doing that? I've worked with a lot of individuals who, I think money is one of the biggest things about having boundaries with money. And having boundaries with money. And if you grew up with, I think, a lot of money trauma and poverty, and now you're doing well, and you met your spouse in college or at work, and you're both are doing well, and then the family, extended family, wants you to help them for certain things, and your spouse is like, "Why are we helping them? You don't even know them. That's the aunt of your aunt, and their kid is sick." And in the old country, it's like, we're just helping $50 or $100, and it's like, okay, all right, like, what is your conversation about this? What are your boundaries around this? Are they always asking for help? Or is this a once in a lifetime event again? So having conversations and understanding your partner's culture is so important before you get married.
Yeah, before,
Right,
or before you have a chat with the person.
before you get married. And I think a lot of people, before they get married, they're like, oh, we're going to figure this out. It's like, have these conversations, have these type of conversations first.
Yeah, and if you need a referral to a premarital counselor who's not in your religious organization, because maybe you don't belong to a religious organization, then you can send me an email.
Hmm.
And I know a few premarital counselors, but you can get premarital counseling through Christian churches, and I'm sure other types of religions also do premarital counseling.
So, yeah, so a lot of my clients, I think it's so important to have these type of conversations before you marry and lay it out all on the table so you understand what you're getting yourself into, either or. So it's important, and of course you're always going to learn along the way. And I always say this, like every other couple, you both have to have your own boundaries as individuals, and you have to have boundaries as a couple also.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
talk early and talk often.
Right. Talk early, talk often. Like you and I always say, our episodes are not here to make you disillusioned that love doesn't exist. Of course, it exists. And there's more to love also. There's also more to love, the realities, and sometimes love is not enough. And you have to have clarity, understanding. You have to know what your limits are as a person, and especially when you are coupled. And if you are a person who is very individualistic, you may, I don't know, going marrying someone who is very involved in community. Is that someone who is your type of partner? And if it is, okay, what are things that you have to work out as a couple and as individuals? I'm not saying it won't work, but you really have to have these type of conversations
Before you get married.
before you get married. I think Chrissy and our thing is have conversations before you get married, and especially before you have kids. Before you have kids, and I'm gonna say, as a therapist, I have worked with grown adult children who are still healing from their childhood wounds. And a lot of it is from their parents not communicating and not dealing with their own mental health, their own wounds that they passed on. And now I am working with them, and it's like, whoa, gosh, why do they even have kids if they're not even willing to discuss these things? So stop the generational trauma, stop the generational cycles, talk and decide what you want as a person first and what you want as a couple.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Christy, before we end the episode today?
No, I can't think of anything. And again, that U.S. Supreme Court case is Loving versus Virginia, and it was decided in 1967. If you want to look that up anymore,
Mhm.
and it's in less than 60 years, it's completely flipped, and the state of Minnesota courts are now not only protecting interracial marriages, but also making sure that the kids who come out of interracial marriages and relationships have an opportunity to experience both cultures.
That's wonderful. That's lovely. We are here to give children options and protect them. That's the
Absolutely.
goal. That's the intention. So I will include that in the description box too, and of course, I will include all Christy's information also. So that is all for today. Christy and I will come up with another episode for July, August. Christy, it's always a joy to have you. I always learn. This was something new that I did not even know existed. So thank you
Yay!
for educating me today.
Education is power.
Education is power. The more you know, the more you learn, the more you know.
Absolutely.
Okay, that is all for today, everybody. Have a safe and restful 4th of July. We will all see you later this month. So take care.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.